the first step you'll take with someone who comes in is to really understand fully where they are at, to understand their delinquency, and kind of get a handle of where the taxpayer is at. And oftentimes people don't really know the extent to the peril that they're in, right? People maybe don't understand where they're at, and you can find out where they're at on their behalf. And that's one of the great kind of reliefs, is that when they come to you at the Tax Resolution Institute, you breathe a sigh of relief. They kind of hand it off to you. And what's kind of the first action that you take on behalf of a new client?
Well, typically the client gets a notice or gets a garnish on their pay, or a levy on their bank account, and then they're forced to take action. The first thing that we need to determine is what they really owe. Because typically the taxpayer gets a notice, they owe $10,000, $50,000, $100,000, or a lot more. We've dealt with cases up to $180 million.
Wow.
And it is not just the notice you received in the mail. You may receive a notice for 1 year. You may owe for 5 years. And so the first thing we do after obtaining a power of attorney, which allows us to speak with the IRS regarding tax matters only, is to determine what returns are unfiled, what years there are taxes owed for, and why those taxes are owed. Usually, by filing the returns, we can eliminate the taxes. Sometimes the returns were filed incorrectly. There's a lot of that going on nowadays, because we have what we call COD income. People's homes have been foreclosed.
Right.
So they get the COD income, a 1099 in the mail, and they owe the tax on the relief of debt. Well, that may not necessarily be true. There are certain provisions of the tax code that allow you to exclude the income tax on those kinds of things. So many, many times, clients have gone to taxpayers have gone to preparers who don't know how to prepare those returns properly,
right,
or have filed the returns themselves and reported this income, where all the tax, this happens quite often in the business, that they thought they owed goes away by properly amending the returns. So not only do we resolve tax collection issues, you know you owe it, you can't pay it.
How do you go about working that out?
And we work it, and we work that out.
Right.
Now, let's talk for a minute about how we work out those kinds of things when we know that you owe the tax.
It's easier to know, right? I mean, is it easier dealing with a client? Where you have that information going up, you going in, you know what's owed. But oftentimes, people should not be thrown by that notice, because that notice, while it is a wake-up call, and we've talked about that number almost all of the time is higher than reality, right? And that's, you come to the Tax Resolution Institute and you find out what that real number is. And that relieves a lot of the fear and the stress right away. It's getting a handle on actually what the issue is.
That's correct. By way of example, let's say that 2 or 3 years ago, you owned and sold Apple stock that you paid $100 a share for, and or $500 a share, which is the price that it's at today,
right?
And you sold it for $400 a share. Well, you've got a loss on the stock, so maybe that was your only income for the year. Maybe you didn't have a job. Maybe your business closed down. Maybe you're retired or independently wealthy. It doesn't matter. The IRS gets a report that you sold 100 shares of Apple stock at $400 a share, or $40,000. Well, if you don't file your return, the IRS is going to tax you on the entire $40,000, as if you paid nothing for the stock,
right,
when in fact you lost $10,000 on that trade of Apple stock. We have clients who've traded 100, 200, 500, day traders that have traded millions of dollars in stock and lost money and not filed returns, get bills from the IRS for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000.